Ladies and gentlemen, we have gameplay. If you haven't heard, Clive from Final Fantasy XVI has been announced as the latest DLC character for Tekken 8. And whereas we got initial gameplay at the Game Awards and on YouTube on the same day from Bandai Namco, there's new footage that came out in the form of a dev talk, where the Final Fantasy and Tekken teams came together with a build of Tekken 8 in hand that has Clive, and kind of do a live demonstration and presentation where they show the moves, show the character, and kind of talk about the philosophies and the design that went into bringing a Final Fantasy character to Tekken. Now, if you read the title, you probably know that the devs from Square Enix were kind of blown away with how the Tekken team put so much effort and care into taking this Final Fantasy character and bringing him into the Tekken world. The dev talk was a 38-minute episode in Japanese with subtitles. I don't expect you to sit through the whole thing. If you want to, my second channel has my live reaction and kind of I read the subtitles aloud if that's a bit more watchable. And then we take notes on the interesting stuff and go through it together live. What I want to do for you here is give you kind of the Cliff Notes version, the quick rundown from both a Tekken nerd's perspective and a Final Fantasy nerd's perspective. I think there's a lot of cool stuff here just from a video game development standpoint, kind of appreciating the work it takes to take a character that another team has worked on for 4 to 5 years and really cares about and do him justice and even impress them in a different game that the Square Enix team is a fan of. A lot of the Square Enix devs here are Tekken players, which is a pretty exciting crossover all in all. It seems like both teams are genuinely interested in each other's projects, and that creates this really fun energy in this talk. But that's enough yapping. Let's get into the meat of this project. What was actually cool about Clive, again, as both a Tekken nerd and a Final Fantasy nerd. And if you're new here and don't know Tekken notation, that's okay. This is a quick breakdown of what you need to know. You think of a PlayStation controller, square, triangle, X, circle. We call those 1, 2, 3, and 4 in Tekken. 1 being your left punch button, 2 being your right punch button, 3 being your left kick button, and don't make me raise my right leg, but that's 4 is your right kick, okay? Now, talking about Clive, he's obviously a swordsman. The first thing we wanted to look at is how he used that sword from range. 2-2 is an infamous string because it calls back to Noctis from Tekken 7. He was the Final Fantasy 15 guest character. And this 2-2 string was infamous, right? It took up so much range. It was so oppressive. But how does Clive's work? Well, we don't know how fast it is. We can tell it has a lot of range. We don't know how linear it is. Is it sidesteppable? Is it reasonably easy to dodge, or is it pretty difficult? The second hit raises questions like, is it safe, right? If you block this, does Jin get a guaranteed hit on Clive? Is it duckable? I doubt it, because if you look at the hit spark here, it hits right on the abdomen. So my guess is it's a mid attack, right? So we probably can't duck it. But a key weakness, it seems, if it's safe, is that it leaves Clive right in point blank range. If he's a swordsman and prefers that mid range, this might be a weakness. Almost to confirm my suspicions right away, the devs say that he's a mid-range fighter for sure, and they show some more sword moves here that attack from that medium to long range. Obviously a huge advantage against a up-close fighter, but that means he may have designed strengths up close. That said, he has moves that seemed also to be designed to push back, right? So they talk about here that if somebody's pressuring him up close, he has attacks that will use his wolf Torgal to push back to full screen. His throws also seem to have pushback as well. But rather than creating a situation up close on wake up, it puts him again in his optimal range. Now, again, this is mostly speculation because I've never played Clive, but this is my guess. Now, aside from the sword play, the use of his iconic abilities, these god powers, is also crucial. There's like a lightning god power right away. This is a core part of his identity, and I think adds a lot of flavor outside of just being a sword fighter, right? There's some Phoenix abilities, and again, we saw the lightning ability. Now, because even though FF16 was an action game, because Tekken is such a move list rich game, they had to add a lot of original moves for Clive. And I think this is where it gets really cool. They had to add moves that were in character, but like you wouldn't be surprised if Clive did this attack, but they're new to Tekken. Even this move is pretty cool. This 1+2 where he summons both Phoenix Wings and does like a push. All of these moves are new, by the way, that I just showed. This is very Tekken coded. Heihachi has a move like this. Reina has a move like that. It's very much in the flavor of a Tekken character. This magic burst is cool because in the combo system for FF16, you can do like sword swipe into gunshot. And it's not gunshot, it's magic. But this kind of weapons master combo system is core to FF16's identity, and they made sure to include it in Tekken 8 as well. Now, Tekken 8's core feature, the heat system, cleanly kind of translates to Clive, because in FF16, he had an ability called Limit Break, where he would activate his god's power, transform a bit, and gain an empowered state that was temporary as well, where his gauge decreases and you get a few empowered attacks during this phase. Cleanly translated to Tekken 8, and if you listen to what Nakatsu, the director of Tekken 8, said in the first episode, that was kind of already heavy inspiration for Clive being included. They started dreaming up the collaboration in December 2022, which is 6 months before FF16 ever came out, and a year before Tekken 8 came out. So this has already been in the works for a long time, even though he's the last DLC. And the crossover between the heat state, limit break, and kind of the story themes of Jin and Clive were a big inspiration for both teams. Well, probably more the Tekken team, right? FF16 was going to do what it was going to do. Now, one thing that's going to be a big point of controversy is one of his icons is Bahamut, a dragon, a light dragon. This gives him a little flying stance, which is a bit weird. But the controversy isn't that. It's going to be that he has a projectile out of this stance. The stance is called Wings of Light, and he can shoot what I think is holy magic. Maybe it's light magic, Dia. But that is going to be really annoying. Now, the question as a Tekken player is it sidesteppable reasonably? It comes out pretty fast, so maybe not, unless you're preemptive with it. Is it duckable? Is it a high? It looks like that, right? It's hitting Jin right in his arms up here, so maybe it's a high that can be ducked. I would hope the visual clarity is... I would hope there's visual clarity there. The stance that you won't see it now, but the stance is a built-in auto low parry. So if you attack him low, he'll do a flip kick and launch you. And then as you can see, he can convert this projectile into his Phoenix stance and dash forward. So this looks like it'll be pretty obnoxious to play against him at long range. It may be you have to block, let him come in, and then play your defense. We'll have to see how it works. I can imagine this being pretty obnoxious. One thing that was cool from the game development side is the Final Fantasy team was not expecting them to use every icon, right? They wanted him to use iconic abilities, but they were like, is this really going to work? Like, doesn't that, like, that's, they said a single character's data capacity. Is it going to be able to handle that many icons? But the Tekken dev team was insistent on making this work because the dev team themselves played Final Fantasy 16 and were inspired by that vision. Now, they put in all this work, and it took, they said 4 to 5 times the animation and graphics effort compared to the most effects-heavy Tekken characters. I don't know which of those characters are, but that is an astounding amount of work driven purely by the desire to do justice to this character, right? And I find that really impressive. I am worried about potato PCs being able to handle it. I'm curious how they... are going to address that. Have they brought optimizations to Tekken that will make it easier to understand? Who knows? Also interesting to note is that the effects were engine specific. So they weren't able... So there's like Phoenix Dash into Lightning. They weren't able to just grab the effects from FF16's engine. They had to recreate it in the Unreal Engine for Tekken. So an impressive amount of work to make sure the character was done right, which I think is very admirable from a creator's standpoint. I feel like it'd be so easy to be lazy and try to piece something together, but they wanted to make sure it looked as good as possible. Now, one note they made as well is that there is a DLC character in FF16, Leviathan, the water dragon, or water serpent, I guess. And when they started working on Clive, they didn't know about this character. They came with them with this kind of like, actually, there's one more character. And the way the Tekken team saw it is it's just like 0.5 times more work after we've already done 5 times more work. But yeah, Nakatsu had actually even asked, like, isn't Leviathan in this game? And he said, well, actually, now that you ask, there is. Came out as later DLC. What's a cool crossover is that Leviathan's DLC is the hardest in the Final Fantasy game, 16 game. I game overed like 5 times in that game on that boss fight, and I never did in the base game. They wanted to translate that to Tekken with kind of like skill checks, right? And that was part of Ryota Suzuki's vision in the middle here. He said, because Leviathan's DLC was harder, let's make those, like, it would be cool if those Tekken techniques were also more advanced. And this is where we see the influence of like blue spark inputs, or the not true just frames, but frame tight inputs. In FF16, when you use Leviathan's power, there was a reload system. You would fire water off, and then a gauge would appear with like a closing circle, and you wanted to sweet spot it to get a perfect reload and kind of recover faster and get like remain empowered. This comes to Tekken in the form of blue spark attacks, where if you press the buttons precisely, he'll do Leviathan attacks with, I believe, empowered damage, maybe better frames, and just there's an execution requirement here. So they thought about designing things for advanced players, even though Clive is supposed to be an accessible character. And we will talk about the whole easy combo thing, by the way. Yeah, so I thought that was a fascinating inclusion to specifically include a technical character. Suzuki-san talks about Leviathan like being a long-range character by design, but also the technical precise elements. And when he saw how they presented the blue spark inputs, he was impressed. He thought it was really cool. Here is some more details about the core stance of Clive, the Phoenix stance. This is what he starts the game with. So they wanted this to be a crucial part of his identity and show a lot of this. That's Rising Flames, a direct move from FF16. And in general, yeah, everything is going to go... That's Heat Wave. Everything is going to go more or less into the Phoenix stance because this is the power he starts with. And that's his Heat Smash using Flames of Rebirth. All abilities you'll recognize from FF16 using similar camera angles, cadences, stuff like that. One of the interesting things is the Scarlet Cyclone was one of his abilities. And it was easy to animate in FF16 because it was just a circular spin. But when they show it here, you'll see that it was kind of hard to convey on a 2D plane. So they went through a lot of reworks on those animations. There's Scarlet Cyclone right here. Right, so he dashes into Phoenix stance, and then he spins, and they had to change the animation to make sure it looked cool. But yeah, Clive has a ton of offensive stance stuff. Stance mix-up character. It'll be interesting to see if the stance is actually strong, as in, like, if you block his sword, can you just interrupt him instead of actually defending? Or does he always get to use his stances? Knowing that it's a Tekken character, I believe it's going to be the case where if you block the move that goes into stance, you can interrupt him or do an armor move or some kind of defensive play that's in the defender's favor. But yeah, really cool stuff. The Heat Wave has a Power Crush state, it seems, an armor state. Yeah, he flashes white very briefly here, and it's kind of visually overwhelming, right? But he flashes white, and that reflects in-game as well, where Heat Wave was a anti-projectile move, right? So it had a defensive quality to it. So they carried that over as well. Regarding his fighting style, they talk about these original moves and how they designed it. The design philosophy was they wanted Clive to feel non-technical, like not a martial artist, but also not an amateur in terms of fighting. So he may not have refined kicks and techniques, but they would be effective, like kind of like a street brawler would use, right? So here are some of his pokes that were original to the Tekken series, and they wanted him, again, to look like a seasoned fighter, but not necessarily technically trained. And I think they've made that very clear. He actually looks kind of clunky, but we know that he's strong and effective, and I think that's a really cool choice to make. People have compared that already to Miguel, who was kind of like a drunk fighter in Tekken 6, and the kind of brutish brawler nature seems to have carried through with Clive's moves as well. One thing that was cool that they talked about is how they had to name all of these unique moves, because in the move list, every move has a name. And many of these generic moves in FF16 don't have names. So they sent over a list of the moves, and I think with their animations as well. And the dev team at FF16 held an emergency meeting to kind of name these moves as quickly as possible. And one of the situations they talk about is this attack called Mercenary Cut, right? So I'll pull it up here. He basically does a kick into a slash, and the initial Tekken team named it like Night Slash or something, right? Like a nightly move. But according to the lore of FF16, Clive has spent more time fighting as on the front lines of the Imperial Army. So he wouldn't have a knight's moveset, but more of a mercenary's moveset. So they decided to rename the move for that reason. That's how much attention they put into the tiniest details of bringing a character over like this. Even just the simple names of the move list should reflect the character's identity. Really cool stuff, I thought, there. Now, they're going to show some combos while they talk about like other crossover stuff, like Clive sees King, the the Jaguar wrestler and asks if he's some kind of Final Fantasy beast, a curl, right? But let's talk about these combos. This is the interesting part, I think, for many people. So, he has a homing mid kick into Torgal. This is a launcher, it seems, yep. There's a tornado combo using Torgal, and then a strong aerial tailspin, right? So, a combo extender. He doesn't finish the combo, but already it looks like Clive has these kind of long, slower swings. There's like a While Rising 2, a crouching launcher. Those moves look kind of slower. Maybe they'll feel really good to do in game, but it kind of reflects, I think, how he uses a big sword, like a long sword. It's not a quick dagger. It's not like a short sword. It requires a lot of work to swing. They talk about Torgal transforming into his Fenrir form when you're in heat. And then they show a similar combo again off down forward 2. Yeah, and he just aesthetically looks different. And I'm sure, I don't think damage is going to be much higher, if at all. Okay. Phoenix. Oh, wait. There's a special interaction between Torgal and Sugar, Leroy's dog. They created special interactions with the Tekken characters where they run past each other. I'm sure there's a little opening animation as well, but I thought that was a nice little nod to kind of the animal companions in both games. I wonder if there'll be one with Lily's cat, Salt. Let's talk about accessible combos. This is a huge hot button issue in the Tekken community, and I want to kind of put a lid on it. One of the points of controversy is that Clive can do combos by just hitting one button. Down forward 2-2, I assume, and then he's going to hit 2-2 over and over again and turn this into a combo, all right? And wow, a one-button combo. This game is for noobs, right? I want you to pay attention to how much damage that did. Okay, this is about halfway between the start of the heat gauge and the end of the nameplate, right? About halfway. And then half of that is gray health, which means it's recoverable. Let's compare that to an easy Kazuya combo. Down forward 1-4 into run-up stomp. Now you'll see the damage is a little more than halfway between the heat gauge and the nameplate, and more of it is permanent health damage. So I heavily have disagreements with the argument that they're making Tekken easier. Every character has easy stuff. The real Clive players, the ones that are actually pushing the character, are going to be doing harder combos than that. And they even show harder combos in this presentation. The point of that combo is just to welcome in new players. And if you're losing to a brand new player who's hitting a 2-2-2 combo, look inward. I think this is not a problem for the balance of Tekken. This is not a problem for the integrity of Tekken. This is just to let people have fun playing the game before they learn the technical stuff. Like, they get to enjoy the visual spectacle without ruining the balance of the game. Isn't that optimal? Isn't that ideal? That you could give someone something visually pleasing that isn't very difficult and isn't very, like, unbalanced? To me, that seems like great game design. Maybe I'm wrong. Anyways, let's keep moving along. They show more Phoenix stances and pokes here. Oh, there's another combo here off of his While Rising 2. I believe this is all a combo off of down forward 1-1-1. So he hits a launcher with from crouch. And then I think he hits down forward 1-2 or down forward 1, some combination of that. And it's a pretty straightforward combo, almost like an auto combo. Again, the damage is tiny. I don't think it's a big issue whatsoever. Then they show some more Phoenix stance moves. There's a low poke out of Phoenix. He has some quick pokes, which I like. I hope they feel good to do. I think that Noctis in FF15 was a poking character, and it'll be cool to see Clive do similar things. They talk about the special style here, which again is a similar philosophy to the auto combo thing I was talking about earlier. If you're losing to someone using special style, they have a limited move list. You have specific things you can study and pay attention to in game. I do think they should make DLC characters labbable, by the way. I think it's pretty dumb that you have to pay for a character to lab it, just to make my position clear. In any case, this is a showcase of more of his moves and some of his combos using the other icons. So in this last combo, we saw down forward 2-2, then he uses Shiva's ice form, and then Torgal's pushback move. So again, this like weapons master multi-god style. His power crush is Titan's Fist. It's wind up from FF16, and it seems really strong. I don't know if that was a true punish that Jin jabbed and maybe he couldn't block after. But it looks really fast, and the fact that he doesn't slow down very much might be really, really good. The cool new abilities. This was a concerning move when we first looked at it. The Leviathan Hell Sweep that hits from like range 3. For the first 2 weeks, this is going to be the freest move ever. But we counted the frames, and it's somewhere between 27 to 29 frames. The stream was in 30 FPS, so going frame by frame wasn't fully accurate. But this will be a move that will probably be reactable because it's so slow. The question will be if Clive has other moves that look similar to hide the animation. But even if he does, at 27 frames, it's going to be pretty unseeable. That said, every time somebody does this against me online, I'm going to get hit by it. I'm just going to keep it real. I am not reacting to that. Unless I do a lot of serious training. Here's a throw with Bahamut. The Giga Flare looks like a command throw, 1+2, so you need to precisely break it, hitting both punch buttons at the same time. Cool visual spectacle, again, similar camera angles to FF16, if not a little bit cooler, if you ask me. I kind of like the cinematic angle that they took there. Another cool detail is this Wings of Light stance. We talked about it having an auto low parry, and they demonstrate it here. He's in this stance. If Jin attacks him with a low, it automatically triggers this flip kick. That's an instant tornado, so you get a mini combo instead of a full combo. And then here's another demonstration of a different Clive combo. Not an auto combo, but way more damage off the same launcher. He does down forward 2-2, I assume, into a quick tornado, and then an attack throw where he hits and it does this Giga Flare animation. That is way more damage. And that looks like a pretty easy combo. So that's a bit more concerning, right? Maybe that will get nerfed. Maybe it's actually not that big of a deal. We'll see. It depends on how the launcher comes about. But yeah, that covers most of his moveset and addresses the accessibility issue, which I think is kind of a important thing to clarify. I don't think the skill floor being that low for that little reward is that much of a problem. I think there are way bigger issues. Like, anyways, I don't want to upset anybody. Like certain other characters. FF16 development had a low skill floor, medium skill ceiling in general, medium high, depending on how you approached FF16. So they were really pleased to see that Clive in Tekken has a similar thing. A very low skill floor, highly accessible, but lots of room for optimization and technical stuff like the Leviathan Just Frames. They talk about the animations because fighting games have shorter animations than, say, an action game. There's less time to convey visual information. So the technical challenge of animating stuff in a quick way that lines up with fighting games while still honoring kind of Clive's design was an impressive thing the Tekken team did as well. One cool other quirk that they wanted to show was Garuda, the wind god, the wind icon, where Clive's jump uses Garuda. So he has a non-traditional Tekken jump, and this is what a Garuda combo might look like, right? Down forward 2-2, Garuda jumps into the air. No, he Phoenix jumps into the air and uses Garuda's claws. But Garuda's jump can do aerial combos in the game, kind of like FF16, where you jump in the air, I assume, and manually follow them. So that's kind of cool. I'm excited to explore that as well. In general, with all of these interactions and things like that, Square Enix was shocked and very blown away by the amount of work that the Tekken team put into Clive and making him feel dedicatedly similar to FF16. And not just visually, not just aesthetically and story-wise, but also the player experience. And Maehiro, the creative director, who's wearing a Xiao Yu shirt, was also very impressed. He's a Tekken player. I believe he plays Paul. And he was very, very impressed with how Clive felt in his playtesting. Now, that covers most of the gameplay. Let's talk about the stage overview. So the stage that comes with this is Phoenix Gate. And this is where the Final Fantasy team was also similarly blown away. They said, why do you, like, the Tekken team requested the Ifrit model and the Phoenix model. And they're like, what are you doing? Why are you asking for this? Like, and it was to create this spectacle where the stage opens up. Ifrit sees the Phoenix. And they start a fight. And that starts our fight, right? The Square Enix team was totally on board with this adaptation of this area. In it, like, even though it's separate from, it doesn't really line up exactly with how the story plays out in FF16, they were on board. They were very impressed by what the Tekken team did here. Now, our PCs are not going to be very impressed. I hope they've done some really good optimization here. Clive and Jin also have some special interactions. I believe they show it. Maybe they don't show it on this stage, or they show it at a different transition. But yeah, they have a special interaction as well. It was this was such an interesting collaboration that this guy Takahashi-san on the Tekken team personally storyboarded their interaction because he was so excited to work on it, rather than having like say lower level employees work on it. One of the things they show in this stage is the wall stage hazards. So the first area, round 1, round 2, etc., have exploding walls. And when the wall explodes, Phoenix does a combo attack. And the Square Enix team was like, whoa, what are we doing? Like, that's so insane. Like, we didn't expect this level of detail in the stage hazards and stuff like that. So it was a very positive response. They were just shocked. In the final round version of this stage, there's a floor break. And they demonstrate that, I believe, here. So the stage transforms. It shows the fighting Ifrits in the background. And then I think they're going to show a Garuda combo. But yeah, the Square Enix team, again, was like very, very on board with this this style of presentation in Tekken. Even though it's very over the top, it's a collaboration. It should be very exciting when you play the original game, that it calls back to how exciting this was. They talk about the music that was played. Very, very exciting. Now, I don't know if... Yeah, okay, here's the floor break combo with Garuda. Right. What's interesting about these hazards, by the way, for the Tekken nerds, is they don't seem to delete gray health. So I don't know if that's an overall nerf to the system or if that's a specific change for this stage, but that's a huge balance adjustment that I think is really, really good. The stage hazards were already insanely overpowered. They talk about designing the walls, how in Tekken you need a clear understanding of where the walls are, and using this blue aura, just like in the practice mode, the Arret Stone of FF16, was how they called back to this. And this was an idea from Square Enix when the Tekken team was struggling to figure out how to create the walls visually. So really cool collaboration again. Moving along, you probably have seen Clive's meter at this point in the top left. I clicked away right as you may have looked there. I apologize. Let's get this. All right. So this meter is a bit of a spoiler if you haven't gone through FF16 yet. So this is one of the icons called Odin. This is the Zantetsuken gauge. Now, you can see it has multiple levels, and it only builds up with certain attacks. Specifically when he pulls out Odin's sword. And I can't believe they clicked away there because that was one of the coolest animations, Dancing Steel. But with Odin's ability, how it works is he builds up gauge in FF16, and then at levels 3, 4, and 5, he can do Zantetsuken, a judgment cut, a one-hit KO historically from the Final Fantasy series. Now, it's not a one-hit KO in this game, but at Zantetsuken level 5, it does a lot of damage. And it's all permanent health. That move, too, that started it, looked really fast. Look at it here. Maybe it's a bit slower because of the wind-up, but if you can catch somebody with this, oh my goodness, that is devastating. Look at this animation again. He dashes and then starts up about now. So it's a bit slow-ish, but it's faster. It's fast enough that you could definitely catch somebody off guard. Like if they're approaching or sidestepping, and you realign or counter hit them. I don't know how the move's property is going to work, but that looks insanely powerful. So that damage is crazy. People are going to be mad about that for sure. Good lord. Now, one cool thing is his rage art. And I'm going to turn up the volume for this one specifically. They included the victory fanfare from Final Fantasy when you kill with the rage art. And the dev team was so excited by that. And because it's like, when else would you get to do the Final Fantasy victory theme? It only made sense in a certain situation. And the Tekken team was so excited to implement this that they had to rewrite parts of the engine. The dev team, and I'm assuming this has to do with the audio engine, the engineers were saying, like, this is going to take extra work. Like, we can't currently support this. But everybody was so excited by FF16. Ikeda said a lot of their changes they get scolded for doing too much. But for a collaboration this big, they wanted to go over the top. And the engineers were like, we have to rewrite the engine, and you just want it for this one part? And he's like, that's right, we want it for just this one part. So I feel bad for the engineers. I've done coding work before. That seems exhausting. But look at how impressed they were when this happened. Like, this is such an exciting moment. He plays this animation. I think that's so sweet. Like they already had moments like that in FF16 where your character like hits a win pose in a freeze frame, right? So Square, Takai-san speaks here and says that they were extremely satisfied. Like, I think the Tekken team went above and beyond what anybody expected them to do, whether it was just including the amount of icons, the technical details of both this Ender, and the fact that like there's a DLC that was difficult to play, the Leviathan one, and they made the execution with that stance also difficult. That's so cool. I think that's so cool. They basically ended up agreeing to anything the Tekken team wanted to do because they had put so much thought into it and effort into it. And to me, this gives a lot of hope for a Tifa inclusion. This shows how much effort the Tekken team is willing to do to honor these Final Fantasy characters. And Tetsuya Nomura is understandably very protective of his characters, the Final Fantasy VII characters. Noctis is one of his babies, and there was a lot of rules that they had to follow when putting Noctis in Tekken 7. You couldn't customize him with every customization. Certain character win poses weren't allowed on him, like where Brian like beats the shit out of you. So there's a lot of rules and care put into Final Fantasy IP, and I think this Tekken team under Nakatsu has done an amazing job of impressing the Square Enix developers, and this bodes very, very well for the inclusion of future characters like Tifa, who everybody wants Tifa in the game, except for like people who don't like seeing Tifa stands argue, right? But actually playing Tifa and seeing her in the game would be so cool. And I think once FF7 is completed, we are more likely to see a Tifa. So that's the majority of the dev talk. In the third episode, they will talk about customization and probably show some fights. I think they show Ryota Suzuki with an arcade stick in his hand, which is pretty cool. Yeah, I think this is going to be really exciting stuff. Did they show it here? Next round. Anyways, hopefully you enjoyed kind of the cliff notes. I know it went relatively long, but it was so information dense, and I think there was a lot to cover. I'm really excited for Clive to come out. We have the dev talk tomorrow, day 3, and then the full release, or the early access release a day after. And we'll be streaming a ton of Clive on Twitch. We'll be putting out videos trying to get through like beginner stuff, and then also push him to the highest rank as possible, kind of optimize him early and see if he's the character for me. I don't know if he's going to be. As you can see, he was designed to be Clive, not Noctis 2.0. So I don't think he's going to play exactly the same, and I don't expect him to. But I'm still excited by the character. If you've been on the fence, hopefully this has been exciting to watch. If you still hate Clive, well, thanks for watching this far anyways. Hope you enjoyed the video. Please leave a like and a comment if you did. Subscribe for more, and I'll catch you in the next one. Peace.